This video is brought to you by my patrons, my thoughts and opinions, the globalist, eugenicist, depopulationist, Bill Gates, one world government, neo-Malthusians, Sanger demons. Did I just get this video demonetized? And probably some TMI, beware. Hi, and welcome to, or back to, my channel where I talk about whatever catches my attention. I'm Kit, and in August 2025, Alex Clark sat down with abortion abolitionist Seth Gruber to discuss the birth control lie, how Big Pharma is rewiring women, with a thumbnail. On the left is Seth with the text, birth control equals beta males, ? And on the right is two men who do not appear in the video holding men for choice signs. And I would really like to stress here that Alex is sitting down with this man to discuss how birth control is bad and women shouldn't use it, and this man she's talking with, and we can reasonably assume Alex herself, is an abortion abolitionist. And abortion abolitionists go one step further than pro-birth folks by advocating for women, and doctors, to be charged for an abortion. They're the ones behind the bills wanting women and doctors to be jailed, fined, get the death penalty for having an abortion. And they have the gall to sit there and talk about how women shouldn't use birth control. There is a giant disconnect here. If you don't want abortions to happen, you should be in favor of birth control. You should be, I know I say this a lot, but it doesn't seem to be sinking in, advocating for comprehensive sex ed, free birth control, affordable and accessible healthcare, higher wages, all things that are proven to lower abortion rates. But instead, they just work to, well, on one hand, you have folks like Lila Rose who work to make abortion illegal. And then on the other, you have folks like Seth Gruber who works, literally, this is their job, they get paid for this, to criminalize abortion. And you have to ask yourself, why? If they're concerned about life, why aren't they doing things that would actually make life better and also lower the abortion rate? I know Lila at least has this bizarre idea that birth control actually increases abortions, which is not true, but I keep asking myself, why are they pulling out all the stops to convince women that birth control is bad? And so far, my best guess is so that when birth control is no longer a right as we've come to expect it to be, women will just shrug and say it wasn't good for us anyway, instead of seeing it for the whole bouquet of red flags it actually is. Also, for two people who want abortion to be charged as homicide and who think birth control fundamentally changes a person, they are remarkably relaxed in this video, almost as though they don't really care. At one point, I was wondering if Seth was drunk or high.
And I was like, I gotta have this spicy commentator at the Seth Gruber Show. We like to be spicy here, okay? Alex Clark joins me today to talk about the deeply disturbing effects of hormonal birth control. Time to go there, guys. Did you know that it is scientifically proven that that hormonal birth control makes women attracted to soy boys? I didn't just say that for the hits or the thumbnail or the clickbait. Women who are on hormonal birth control for years and years and years are more attracted to beta males. It's a full-blown war on God's created order, and we are going to bring all of the receipts. Get ready to get triggered.
I just wonder if you think there's a full-blown war on God's created order, why are you laughing? Or is he laughing because he thinks they're winning? I'm perplexed, but I do want to address some claims he made at the beginning of the episode.
You kill your baby, what's the likelihood that you're going to get breast cancer, preterm delivery in a later pregnancy, or mental health problems after you've killed your baby? Like, we went there.
Having an abortion does not increase your risk for breast cancer. A medical abortion doesn't seem to raise the risk of future pregnancy complications, but, quote, many studies have shown that surgical abortion has little impact on future pregnancies. Some studies have found that it may slightly raise the risk of future premature birth, miscarriage, or low birth weight, but other research did not find this increase in risk. End quote. And finally, quote, scientific research from around the world shows having an abortion is not linked to mental health issues, but restricting access is. End quote. And I would like to add that, unlike Seth and Alex, I'm not sharing my opinions or interpretations in this video. My sources will be linked below. For some reason, Seth didn't see fit to include their sources for this video, which does make it a bit difficult to see where they're coming from. And please remember, none of us on your screen right now are doctors, and we are definitely not your doctor. If you have a question or concern, please speak to your healthcare provider. Don't take the word of randoms on the internet. And that includes myself, and especially don't take the word of an influencer. Okay, let's get into the video.
So this pregnancy center worker sends me this message. And this is the audio. You guys will love to hear this because I think we might have shared this on our donors about a baby safe, but I didn't say this publicly. And she sends me this message. She's like, I've listened to the episode that you did, that Alex Clark did with you like 3 times. And I like all these notes. And we had this woman who was abortion minded in the pregnancy center, and she was going to abort and nothing we were doing was talking her down. So I just started telling her like all the chances of her getting breast cancer and all this other info. And it scared her into keeping the baby, and she's keeping the baby.
Wow.
And it was like, I was like, that is the coolest story.
The coolest ever.
I'm skeptical of how abortion-minded someone could be if they found themselves at a pregnancy center, but then pregnancy centers do disguise themselves as healthcare clinics, so people go there by mistake. As for the rest, I don't believe in hell, but if I did. Anyway, I'm really not sure why Alex Clark is treated like an expert on all things health and wellness, but here we are.
There's a massive lawsuit of like hundreds of women suing Pfizer for hiding the fact that a certain birth control now we know is tied to brain tumors. So yes, it is poison. Anyway, shot chaser. Yeah, I was right, of course.
And she's humble too. Pfizer is being sued for the depot shot. Quote, in a new study published in Expert Opinion on Drug Safety, women who took the shot compared to women taking an oral contraceptive had a significantly higher risk of developing the brain tumor. End quote. It seems to me that the shot just has issue after issue, and that could be worth looking into. But that does not mean birth control as a whole is bad and we shouldn't have access to it. And no, Alex, so far as I'm aware, has never said the government should ban birth control. But I would be willing to bet that if the federal or a state government did, she would praise it as a win for women, which, in my opinion, is what this whole thing is about. Point out the dangers, the side effects, ignore all the good, because yes, women being able to control their fertility is a good thing, and so build the case that Big Pharma is poisoning women, so access to birth control should no longer be considered a right. Well, that's actually a win against Big Pharma. These are, as I mentioned at the start of the video, my thoughts and opinions, but it's so obvious to me that that's what's going on here. Also, the language around certain types of birth control. As Jessica Valenti pointed out, the Trump administration plans to destroy nearly $10 million worth of contraception, and it labeled them abortifacients. Quote, President Trump is committed to protecting the lives of unborn children all around the world, the State Department told the New York Times. The administration will no longer supply abortifacient birth control under the guise of foreign aid. End quote. The birth control in question, pills, IUDs, and implants. Quote, no abortion methods were included in the stockpile according to humanitarian groups in an inventory list obtained by American media outlets. Birth control pills, intrauterine devices, and hormonal implants stop pregnancy by preventing ovulation or fertilization. Birth control methods do not threaten human life because in almost every case, egg and sperm never meet, physicians say. End quote. I cannot red flag this enough, but they are working all angles. As the government classifies birth control as abortion medication, and by the way, RFK Jr. is reviewing abortion pills, even though we know abortion is actually safer than giving birth, which is what they should actually be working on if they're concerned about life. The US has the highest infant and maternal mortality rate among high-income nations. And given what they pulled with Tylenol on autism, I have no faith that this admin will actually be honest with us about the results of their review. It will back up their narrative. Where it goes from there, I don't know. I would love to be wrong, by the way. Anyway, I guess we should get back to the video and listen to what not Dr. Clark has to say.
What's really disturbing is that my generation, which is millennial women, we were totally sold this lie that our periods were too complicated, that it was too over our head, we can't understand them, one, so we should put on the pill, and that any and all discomfort during your period means that you should be put on the pill. So for most of us...
this was like the
yeah.
common layman wisdom and application.
It was not because we were all having sex as teenagers. We were just put on it because it was like, oh, you have cramps, you should be on the pill. Oh, you have pimples, you should be on the pill.
So it was like the universal Band-Aid.
Yes. It was a universal Band-Aid given to us. We were not told anything about how to track our cycle or how to understand it, or how there's, 4 different phases of your cycle and how that's so important to know as women, and that really you can only get pregnant 5 days a month, by the way. You don't need to be on the birth control pill. If you know your cycle, you know when you can get pregnant. Like it's really simple.
There isn't a study to back up anything she just said there, but let me know in the comments if that was true for you. I was put on a non-birth control pill for acne as a teenager, but I was on the pill for a month when I was 12 and 14 because my period just wouldn't stop. And that did fix the issue for a few years at a time, but it's never been solved. Now I take Provera 5 days a month, and we'll see if that lasts me through to menopause. I do think women's health issues are neglected and should be studied more, and that we should be given more education, by the way. None of this is to say we just need to suck it up and deal by swallowing a pill, but I strongly disagree with everything Alex is saying here. I wasn't having sex as a teen, but I do think it's a bit much to expect teens to track their cycles, especially since in all the research I've done trying to figure out my reproductive issues, periods are a bit haywire during the early years as your body sorts itself out, so even if you did try to track, it still might not work. And there's an interesting dichotomy here where they seem to think women and girls are being given birth control for no reason. She would just be fine without it. But people go on birth control for a reason. And it's really not up to strangers to say whether or not that reason is valid. Anyway, I'm going to take a moment to wonder why we can't advocate for women's health research without villainizing birth control, which has done so much for women, and then we'll carry on.
You're really suppressing your hormones and your body's ability as a woman to kind of let you know what's going on hormonally. And so what's happening is, like you said, it's a Band-Aid and it's hiding different things that are going on inside. For example, you'll put a girl on the pill, 13, 14, 15 years old. She's on it for a decade. She might have endometriosis brewing. She could have PCOS brewing. You'd have no idea because it's hiding the symptoms. Those symptoms are important if you have super heavy periods, if you have super light periods, if you're skipping periods, if you have extremely debilitating PMS, or cramps or anything where you're like throwing up sick. That is something, your body is telling you something's wrong. You need to get it fixed. But without that sign, then you are waiting. You're on the pill for a decade. You get married. You decide, okay, it's time to have a family. So you stop taking the pill. And then it's like, oh, I'm having trouble getting pregnant. Why? Well, we just found out, ma'am, that you have endometriosis that's gotten like 10 times worse over the last decade you didn't know about.
I'm not a doctor, so correct me if I'm wrong, but can't birth control be prescribed to help with endometriosis? Quote, hormonal birth control is a treatment option for endometriosis. It may relieve pain and reduce the growth of lesions. End quote. I seem to remember tales of people using birth control to manage their endometriosis until they were ready to start a family, but the plural of anecdote isn't data, which some of us in this video would do well to remember. Also, can't endometriosis come back? So even if you did, for example, get treated at 18, couldn't it become an issue again at, let's say, 28? And yeah, per the World Health Organization, endometriosis can be treated but not cured. Also.
And this is happening like across the country.
Yes.
This is like endometriosis is common enough that it's getting worse in tens of thousands.
It's so severe that it is
women.
One of the core tenets of the MAHA movement that RFK Jr. has given the go to start looking into the root cause of PCOS and endometriosis because it is so bad. Dang. And also infertility rates are rising 1% every year.
I couldn't find a source for infertility increases 1% every year, and can anyone find a source for the claim that we have an epidemic of women being put on birth control in their teens only to find out they have endometriosis when they try to conceive? I'm sure that's happened, but I doubt it's as common as Alex would have us believe. Also, it takes an average of 4 to 11 years for a woman to be diagnosed with endometriosis, which I highly doubt RFK Jr. is going to do anything about. Again, though, I would love to be wrong.
And what I like to point out is because the left will be quick to say, like, birth control doesn't cause infertility. Alex Clark is lying. That's misinformation. Mm-hmm. Okay, birth control itself may not cause infertility. It is indirectly causing infertility because it is masking symptoms of things that are going on inside you so you can get it fixed.
Yeah.
You can't fix endometriosis. And for some reason, Alex doesn't want to acknowledge this, but sometimes birth control can help fertility. Quote, if you have ovulation difficulties, birth control might help. Doctors often recommend hormonal birth control for people with PCOS as it can regulate hormones and help with ovulation. End quote. But at least she admits it doesn't cause infertility. Anyway, let's go on a journey.
It's a little path there that you're on. And then, of course, what happens is while you're on the pill, your rates of anxiety and depression skyrocket. So then you're put on another pill, usually Lexapro. So then you're on that. That's your second pharmaceutical intervention. Then after decades of being on Lexapro and the pill, then you want to have babies, you can't. So then what's the next thing they sell you on the pharmaceutical treadmill? It is IVF. So then you're told to spend 20 to 30 grand to maybe get pregnant. It may not work. And it's just a really sad state of affairs.
I'm going to need a source for the claim that you go on birth control and that makes you depressed and anxious, so you go on another pill, and then decades later you can't have babies, so you try IVF. Has it ever happened? I have no doubt. But no, that is not the typical path for the average person using birth control. Some people do react badly to, for example, the pill. And the solution isn't to just deal with it or give up on it, but to keep trying different methods until you find out what works for you. Maybe you'll decide the side effects aren't worth it and you'll go without. And that is totally fine. On day 3 and 4 on Provera, I get a low-level headache, but I decide it's worth it to keep my period in check. It's all about what you want, what you decide. And of course, discuss with your doctor. Mine suggested an IUD, but I'm not too thrilled with the idea of putting plastic in my uterus, so her next recommendation was Provera. And if that doesn't work, I will be messaging her again. I will say it's important to find a doctor you're comfortable with that listens to you, but your doctor isn't your enemy. If they are, you should find a new one, if you can. I know insurance in the US can make that difficult, especially in rural areas. Anyway, Alex's 5 truths to drop on us.
I wanted to talk about 5 truths that are controversial even for self-admitted pro-lifers. Like, these are things that even within the pro-life movement, we're a little divided on. Not everybody in the pro-life movement wants to talk about the ethical, moral, gray areas of IVF. Not everybody in the pro-life movement wants to talk about jail time for abortionists or women who get abortions if it's made illegal. Not everybody wants to talk about the birth control pill or daycare, the dangers of daycare for children under 3. I talked about that. And also that if you're pro-life, you shouldn't be feeding your kids poison. And so I talked about what you feed your kids. So yeah, we just hit it all.
Well, at least she doesn't think abortion should be punished with the death penalty. I'm curious about the daycare claim, and since there's no sources, I'm going to go ahead and guess it's about the Canadian study, which I'll let Professor Neil break down.
Daycare has been shown to harm the ability to bond and feel secure, especially for babies. Their mental health outcomes later in life are impacted. Research proves this.
Hit me with it.
All I do is pull up one of the longest running studies in human history about daycare, conducted by the Canadian government.
The study that he refers to here is almost certainly this report that was generated in 2015 showing that Quebec's children had poorer behavioral and mental health outcomes than did their peers. Why do the results of this 20-year longitudinal study point their finger at daycare? Because Quebec had started funding nearly the entire system back in 1997.
How daycare, especially early in life, and especially in large amounts, outcomes 10, 20 years later in that child's life, much worse.
So would you be surprised if I told you that it doesn't actually show any of that at all? One of the many problems with this study is that it was not a study specifically of children who attended daycare, but of all children in Quebec. It did not matter that a third of Quebec children didn't go to daycare. There was no effort made to study the effects on children attending public daycares, which have been shown to improve outcomes, versus private daycares. Because in those well-regulated government-run daycares, there is a demonstrable positive effect. And that had been found to be the case 2 years before this 2015 study was released. And because the authors of that study made no effort to control for any of these factors, made no effort to look at the children who are in daycare specifically, even defenders of their conclusions admit it's honestly just a best guess.
Outcomes 10, 20 years later in that child's life, much worse.
So not only do these two overstate the claims of the study, here he's actually just wrong. Because subsequent research shows that by the time those same children reach their teenage years, those negative emotional and social behavioral outcomes have largely disappeared. 20 years later, there's no effect. Actually, no. Let me correct that. 20 years later, there's no negative effect. And for those of you who favor economic arguments, the workforce participation rate of Quebec mothers with children under 3 rose dramatically over that 20-year period. And it's estimated that for every dollar the government spent on daycare, between $2 and $3 of economic activity was generated.
More problems in their life strongly correlated with the daycare piece. Now, does that definitively prove it was just the daycare? No.
And there, at the end, he admits that it's just a correlation. So he does understand that this doesn't prove or show anything, in spite of the fact that they've been using words like prove and show this whole time. I'm honestly not sure what's worse, failing to understand the research or irresponsibly claiming that it demonstrates something that it does not.
Moving on.
Millions of women and their own personal stories of being on the pill obviously tell a different story. And, you know, we're supposed to be believing all women, but somehow when it comes to this topic, they don't want to believe all women.
She's referring to side effects from being on birth control, and weirdly, this comes after Seth tells a story of being amazed by how many female classmates were on the pill, apparently with no side effects, which he's skeptical of, but if someone tells you they're not experiencing side effects, why wouldn't you believe them? Yes, there are shitty doctors who dismiss patient complaints, but there is no movement of anyone saying birth control has no side effects. All medications have side effects. We know this. The goal is to find the one with the least amount of side effects, or side effects you're okay with.
But one of my favorite things is when I'm talking to high school students or college students.
Who is having Alex Clark talk to students of any age?
As I love to call out the boys, I love to do a little health class and talk about birth control and talk about periods and all of this because they're not taught this in their health class. And I call out the boys specifically and I'm like, you need to tell your girlfriend to get off birth control and you need to understand a woman's cycle.
Why do I have a feeling that Alex would have a fit if comprehensive sex ed was actually taught in schools? But anyway, yes, men should have an understanding of women's cycles, and no, boys and men shouldn't be telling anyone to get off birth control. Or any medication, actually. That is a decision for the person taking it.
The truth to understanding women is really understanding our cycles.
Let me know in the comments if you agree with this. Like, yeah, I'll be more frisky if my body decides to ovulate and more tired when I'm on my period, but at the end of the day, I'm still me no matter where I am in my cycle.
And what really grabs the attention of these teenage boys is when I say, do you know that your girlfriend is attracted to a different type of man scientifically on the pill versus off? And they're like, well, what do you mean? And I go, oh, just wait. Your girlfriend is on the pill. You should know that a woman is actually more attracted to a feminine beta man when she's on the pill versus off. If your girlfriend is off the pill, she is attracted to a more masculine man. And then all of them get all like, oh my gosh, like, you know what I mean? And so that's like a really spicy, fun thing to do.
So she manipulates teenage boys into thinking their girlfriend, if she's on the pill, sees them as a beta male, which is not only a shitty thing to do in general, but especially to a teenager. And it's also not true. Yes, there are studies about women's preferences when on the pill and throughout their cycle, but there is no conclusive evidence that shows women prefer different men when on the pill or off, or that women's preferences change throughout their cycle. Setting aside that, well, alpha and beta men aren't actually a thing, especially in science, these folks speak as though women shapeshift into a new person every few days. If women's preferences changed drastically due to hormones, the divorce rate would be sky high. Or the marriage rate would be way lower. Or both. It's normal for attraction to fluctuate throughout a relationship. It's normal for relationships to end. Stop ascribing everything to hormones and acting like people have no agency. And as an aside, if Alex is telling teenage boys that their birth control taking girlfriends are with them because they're on birth control and consider them beta males, is that really a way to get a boy to convince a girl to go off birth control? If it plays such an outsized role in decision making, wouldn't they then break up? What would his incentive be in this? Also, what are we considering masculine? Also, someone can look whatever we consider masculine and not behave in what we would consider stereotypically masculine ways. But anyway.
We're not doctors, right?
He should have stopped there.
Right.
You have a ton of medical professionals on your show.
Yeah, about that. Every time I look into the whole women attraction birth control thing, it's only those that appear on shows like Alex Clark's that turn up. Huh.
This is natural to have a cycle.
Yep.
Just like it's natural for the uterus to have a baby in it at some point.
Can someone please inform that man that just because something can occur in nature, that doesn't make it good or desirable?
The early feminists, right? Or maybe 1.5 or 2 second wave feminism was basically like, women need abortion to be equal with men. Because we can't climb the corporate ladder. We have uteruses. He can do his thing. I get pregnant. He goes back to work. And now I can't climb the corporate ladder. I'm not getting the raises. I'm put back in my career. So for women to be equal with men, we need to be able to kill our babies. It's always, however God's world works and my body works, because it was designed to work that way, I don't like it that way.
Incorrect. Setting aside that not everyone believes in a God, and that even everyone who believes in a God doesn't believe abortion is something God doesn't like, women need abortion to be legal because having control over one's body is the most important thing we own, and because it is a medical procedure, and not having that available can be fatal. There is a reason women in states where abortion is banned are twice as likely to die during pregnancy or childbirth.
It's women are not ovulating, and you want, like, we need a world where women are ovulating. Like, if you want women to be feminine again and soft again and beautiful and like wanting to be like truly in their feminine, women need to be ovulating. And I think it's interesting, like when you see these liberal women, screaming about abortion and all these different things, and they all look a certain way and they're all like overweight and unhappy. And I'm always like, are you on the pill? Almost 99% of the time they are. That's what it does to women.
Now, wait a minute. Alex thinks the pill makes women overweight and unfeminine, but, well, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that Alex is not on any sort of birth control, but she's admitted to being an aggressive speaker and asked for advice as to how to be more feminine. Is it possible that, perhaps, not all women are soft and dainty regardless of birth control usage? Does Alex really think that, if those women she assumes are on the pill were taken off of it, they would be softer and more docile? I can assure you that bleeding does not make me relax into my feminine or whatever, and I doubt I'm alone in that. Also, does Alex really think if birth control was banned, women wouldn't protest that? Hello? Actually, she's about to contradict herself.
And so, the girls that are like, I don't know, I just feel like passionate about nothing. I just like, I feel super numb and all of these different things. And then they get off the pill and they're like, whoa, it was nice to meet me. Like, I didn't even know that I had a personality or passions about anything. And like, it's like I see in color after seeing in black and white. It's like you're a totally different person.
Let me try to get this straight. Women on birth control are simultaneously angry, overweight, and unhappy, and taking them off it will make them ovulate, whereupon they will be feminine and soft and beautiful. But also, women on birth control feel passionate about nothing, and taking them off it will help them discover a personality and passions. Question. What if they discover they're passionate about reproductive justice? Second question, why are we assuming that women are naturally soft and beautiful and it's birth control that interferes with that? We know from the sheer variety of conservative commentators that that is not true. And now that I'm thinking about it, I'm having a hard time thinking of a conservative commentator that is soft-spoken outside of the religious ones like Milena Ciciotti. Alex, Brett, Candace, Amala, Ariel, none of them strike me as soft or even especially feminine. And then there's myself. So all of us are presumably naturally cycling, and we're all very different. So yeah, I'm not buying this idea that if women just got off birth control, we would all just be feminine and happy. Also, per the most recent stats, 64% of women in the US are using contraception. Quote, in 2015 to 2017, 64.9% of the 72.2 million women aged 15 to 49 in the United States were currently using contraception. The most common contraceptive methods currently used were female sterilization, 18.6%, oral contraceptive pill, 12.6%, long-acting reversible contraceptives, 10.3%, and male condom, 8.7%, end quote. So, 99% of those liberal women protesting are on the pill. I also don't buy that Alex asks those women if they're on birth control, but anyway, I'm pretty sure we're not supposed to take this too seriously, but if Alex is going to spew nonsense, I'll be there to fact check to the best of my ability, because if someone decides they don't want to be on any form of birth control, that's their business. But if someone is going to misinform and fearmonger about it, I'm not here for that. People need to know the truth so they can make informed decisions.
And you're seeing this crazy epidemic of newly married women who have been on the pill since they were teenagers, getting off the pill because they're married now and they're ready to have kids. Okay. And then they're like, who am I married to? Like, they're not attracted to their husband. And so then they have to work through becoming
this is
attracted.
Becoming common?
Yes.
Well, you would know. You get the stories and you talk to the young women.
And so I'm like, you've got to get your girl off the pill.
Gnarly.
Before you pop the question, get your girl off the pill. Make sure she's attracted to you.
Citation needed. And no, Instagram DMs don't count as a study. It's like when, who was it? To your sister, or was it Issa? One of them posted something about teen marriage, and she had a bunch of DMs about how some followers married as teens and they were so happy, and then others hadn't married as teens but wished they had, and so they concluded that, actually, teen marriage is a good thing. And, well, setting aside the fact that studies show teen marriages have a higher divorce rate than those who marry later, yeah, your DMs are going to be full of praise for teen marriage because that's who follows you. I have no doubt Alex hears more about how awful birth control is because of the audience she's cultivated with her wellness podcast. Anyway.
Ooh, if you understand the luteal phase, which is the week before a girl starts menstruating, if you understand that as a man, you have cracked the code. That's when you bring her the chocolate. That's when you rub her feet. That's when you ask her to do nothing. You're going to take care of the dishes. You're going to take care of everything in the house. You're going to tuck her into bed. You're going to turn on the nightlight. You're going to, blow out the candle, wash her hair for her. You're going to do everything. And she's going to be like a little angel and you'll never fight.
No matter where I am in my cycle, having someone hovering like that would drive me insane. What if you just get to know your wife or whoever and find out what she wants? I think it was the Harper O'Connor video that noted leftists are hesitant to make prescriptive statements, and that is at play here, but I also think it's true. I can't make a statement saying that if you do X, Y, and Z, B will happen. There is no magic formula to ensure arguments are averted before they even happen. All you can do is get to know your partner, which does take work and doesn't guarantee anything, which is probably why the notion that if you apply this formula, you'll get this result is so appealing.
If you understand when the luteal phase is and understand everything about that, you'll never fight anymore in your relationship. It's literally magic. And then ovulation. For the married men, ovulation. You know when your wife is ovulating, all you have to do is like, oh, you want someone to take the trash out? I got you, honey. Oh, you want something at the store? I got you, honey. And guess what? You are getting laid. This is magic. It's literally understanding women.
No, really. All he has to do is stand there. It really is magic.
I also think, actually, Alex, a lot of this fits into, the globalist, eugenicist, depopulationist, Bill Gates, one world government, neo-Malthusian Sanger demons. Because if you're not ovulating regularly, Now, okay, I'm a dude, all right? Tell me if I'm right here. You don't really want to have babies.
I guess Seth has decided to channel his inner Allie Beth. But no, ovulation makes you want sex, and that's not a guarantee, not babies. And yes, it is very possible to want one but not the other. And that also includes the opposite. It's possible to want to be a parent but not want to have sex. Alex, of course, agrees with him, and then...
What I think is fascinating is that when I started talking about the birth control pill on the conservative right and bringing up that it's poison in 2021, every single news outlet
That's
slammed
when you
me.
started doing it, huh?
Yeah, that's when I started talking about this constantly because I was just blown away. And all of these news outlets, NBC News, Media Matters, all these people were like, this is, Christian nationalism, far-right extremism. I'm like, shut the front door. What are you talking about? You guys were the ones that started this argument. Hello, the Nelson Pill hearings. In the early 70s, it was liberal feminists who showed up and protested and said, you are not telling us the truth about the side effects of the pill. Those women had been on the pill for 20 years at that point, and they were so sick. This is in the early 70s.
Wow.
And they were libs. They were liberal feminists.
Small correction, the birth control pill was approved in 1960, so they could only have been on it for 10 years at that point, not 20. But to the point, there is a big difference between women protesting to get the side effects of the pill acknowledged versus what Alex is doing. Alex is not advocating for more transparency, more research. She is spreading misinformation to scare women into not using birth control. And I am curious, most of her focus seems to be on the pill, so is she okay with IUDs? I'm guessing no. And as I mentioned before, whether intentional or not, I do think this is in service too. If government decides birth control isn't abortifacient, women like Alex will say this is a good thing for women because it's poison, and her followers will be mollified.
And of course, who helped invent the pill? It was Margaret Sanger, who was doing experiments on brown people in Puerto Rico, and on brown women in Puerto Rico, and some of them died. And then she said, well, this seems good enough. I'm going to bring it to America. We're going to experiment on the American women now.
Quote, ultimately, approximately 1/3 of Puerto Rican women were sterilized, many involuntarily, under policies that pressured women to undergo hysterectomies after their second child's birth. This policy helped create candidates for Pincus's trials. Educated women didn't want to try the new medication, fearing side effects, but less educated women were desperate to avoid both pregnancy and sterilization. Pincus focused on that group of women during clinical trials that recruited in the poorest areas of San Juan and other cities beginning in 1955. End quote. I obviously don't think lying to people is a good thing, especially about things like clinical trials. People should have all the necessary information before agreeing to something. I also don't think a choice of try this experimental pill or be sterilized is really a choice. But I am curious, does Alex not see the benefits of the pill at all? Does she understand why women would want to control their fertility? Does she understand how important that is?
And it's like, how can you deny
I'm impressed you knew that.
the eugenicist history of the birth control pill? Of course, abortion. It's all connected. It was all to basically elevate white babies above the rest. If you are a liberal feminist, right, these are the things that you care about. How in the world are you not talking about abortion and the pill?
So, to be clear, we need to talk about the eugenicist origin of the pill whenever we discuss birth control, but talking about how racist the US is and has been is un-American? Interesting. Anyway, feminists do talk about abortion and the pill. It's important for people to know and understand their bodies, to have access to healthcare, which includes reproductive healthcare, and be able to create the family they want. This includes things like livable wages, subsidized childcare, parental leave. It does not include things like banning abortion and banning/restricting birth control under some notion that women will be healthier and happier having someone else make decisions for them. Feminism is not about dictating how things will be to women. Anyway, let's close with some advice from Seth.
Just be healthy, be a man, don't be gay, don't drink soy milk, find a woman, marry her, don't cheat on her, don't look at porn, raise your kids to be fearless. And when evil shows up, just punch it in the face. Of course, it's just evil, good, angels, demons, Satan, God. You get all granular. It's good to learn all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it's so simple.
He concludes by saying that we've been lied to for so long, and then they talk about how the rebranding of Alex's show went, and hey, Alex says she wouldn't advocate for banning the pill, but I still think she would celebrate it as a win. And one more thing.
We didn't get into the birth control thing about how actually it can sometimes be an abortifacient.
Yeah.
Wrong. Birth control doesn't end a pregnancy. But wait.
Right? Because I meet people all the time. They come up to me, Alex, and they say, my mom was on birth control when she got pregnant with me. So we know that it's not foolproof.
No,
we know it's not like, there's no guarantee that you're 100% not going to get pregnant while you're on the pill. And so a woman gets pregnant. Well, the birth control, one of the final fail-safes is to actually prevent implantation.
Correct. Yeah, it's making it a hostile environment.
Mm-hmm. So the left likes to say life begins, it doesn't begin at conception, it begins at implantation. No, it begins at conception. And then within 5 to 7 days, 2 to 7 days or something, this new baby, this new human goes down the fallopian tube and implants in the uterine wall.
Sure, doctors say pregnancy begins when a fertilized egg implants into the uterus, but Seth says it's when the sperm meets the egg. I predicted this a few years ago, that we would get to a point where an abortion would meet a fertilized egg, and, well, here we are. And for anyone about to assure me it's not mainstream, we have Trump's admin calling the pill, IUDs, and implants abortifacients. It can't really get more mainstream than the federal government. And for anyone wondering why that matters, this is how they ban birth control, by reclassifying it as an abortifacient. So while Alex might say she doesn't advocate for banning the pill, she doesn't have to. She's helping us down that path just as she is. Anyway, I'm really kind of tired of these folks, but one more thing.
Well, and the left always wants to be like, oh, well, you're anti-birth control just because you're pro-life. So it's just because you want people to have as many babies as possible and all this. I'm like, okay, there's a lot of things here. I'm not anti-birth control because I'm pro-life necessarily. I'm anti-birth control, period, because I just think there's so many negatives that outweigh the positive. I mean, there's really like no positives at all, honestly. Like, I think there's so many negatives, and it's like, I'm anti-birth control because I'm pro-woman, and then I'm also pro-life because I'm pro-woman.
I would assume pro-woman and pro-child means she wants things that make life better for women and children, so why is she focusing on birth control? I always find it interesting when these folks say that, they're just looking out for women because, for one, that sounds really condescending. You think women need someone else to tell them when something is good or bad for them? You don't think women are able to decide what's best for themselves? And also, they always make it sound as though the choice is birth control or just, carrying on like normal. But if you're taking it to prevent pregnancy, you're comparing birth control to pregnancy. And pregnancy has its own risks and complications, some of which can be lifelong and can even be fatal. Yet another reminder that the US has the worst maternal and infant mortality rate among high-income nations, which these so-called pro-life folks never talk about. Anyway, a PSA.
That's why I do the health the negative health for the woman from abortion.
Yes.
Because I know that might be one of my only ways to get a pro-choice woman to go, oh, have I been lied to by Planned Parenthood?
Yeah.
Have I been used? Have they lied to me just to sell abortion? Why wouldn't they have told me this? Informed consent, right? Pro-choice assumes that you're actually getting all the information. So sometimes I use that, like you just to get the liberal pro-choice chick uncomfortable with what she supports. If I can't get her on the don't kill babies part, like, okay, well then at least hear me about how you have been lied to, So it's all strategic. It's all good.
I am begging everyone watching or listening to this to take everything with a grain of salt and to call out misinformation when you see it. There is a difference between getting something wrong, but this man admits that he lies to women. So please, research everything someone tells you. And that includes me. Please check my sources and be mindful of those sources. I have a media bias chart linked below as well. Anyway, they scare each other about the future of reproduction, and that's pretty much it. I can't believe I had so much to say, but they did say so much. Most of which either can't be fact-checked or is just flat out untrue. And something really interesting I've noticed about rightward content, whether it be conservative influencers or red pill bros, is that they will take the littlest thing and use it as proof. Like in the Feminism Canceled Beauty video, when the creator was talking about how women have rape fantasies and that confuses men, and the study being used as proof of this had around 300 participants. And that is why it's important to examine the sources. And of course, unless it's something medical, we don't live our lives by studies. They can be interesting, but most people aren't planning to get married at a certain age because studies show if you get married before or after that age, you have a higher risk of divorce. It can be, again, interesting to figure out why that might be, but it's not a decree. And I, for one, would not like life to be mandated by studies. And I don't think these folks would either. I have so many more thoughts on this, but that's enough for this video.
Christian nationalism, yeah!
And that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.